They say you never really know someone until you live with them. I always thought that was about dirty dishes and bad habits, not about your straight roommate sending you a late night you up text, followed by a picture of his very impressive dick. For a second, I thought he sent it to me by mistake. I almost ignored it, almost pretended I never saw it. But then he sent another message. Come over and help me out. And that was the moment everything changed.
I always thought Jason was cool. We had been roommates for a while now, and I'd gotten used to the rhythm of living together. We were both fresh out of college, trying to figure out our next steps, but honestly, the world was kind of a mess, and the housing situation wasn't making anything easier. We needed the money, and splitting rent with him seemed like the best option. I wasn't thrilled about having a gay roommate, but it wasn't something I ever worried about. He was my friend, and I didn't see his sexuality as something that could change the way I looked at him. I had a girlfriend, and everything was fine. I didn't think about it too much. Until that night. I had been talking to my girlfriend, but we'd been fighting a lot recently. The kind of fighting that left me frustrated. Tired of the same old routine, I just felt like doing something different. I don't know why I did it, but in the heat of the moment, I just sent a picture. Not to her, but to Jason. For a second, I regretted it, thinking I'd made a mistake, but then he responded. He didn't get angry. He didn't freak out. He just said, "You do know this is your roommate, right?" My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea how to process it. Should I be embarrassed? Should I apologize? But then, I realized. This was different. I wasn't just talking to Jason like a regular roommate anymore. We were having some kind of moment, one I didn't expect. The idea of him being gay and me being the straight guy, what did that mean now? Did it change things? I had to know. I had to ask him if he could come over and help me out. I couldn't help myself. It felt like a weird crossroads, but I needed to know where it would lead.
I always thought my roommate was straight. I mean, he had a girlfriend. They were always texting and going out together. I didn't mind it at all. I respected his boundaries, and I was used to being around straight guys. We had a good thing going. Shared rent, easygoing, no drama. But then that night happened. I was just laying in my bed, trying to unwind after a long day when my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. You up? I figured he probably needed something. Maybe advice. Maybe just someone to talk to. So I responded like I always would. Yes, what's up? And then the picture. My eyes almost popped out of my head. It was a dick pic. I thought I was seeing things at first. I mean, there's no way this could be meant for me, right? He must have sent it to me by mistake, thinking it was going to his girlfriend or someone else. But then I couldn't stop looking at it. It was a beautiful one, honestly. He had nothing to be ashamed of. I tried not to think too much about it, but I couldn't help it. I needed to let him know he sent it to the wrong person. So I sent back, "You do know this is your roommate, right?" And then the reply came through and my heart dropped. He asked me to come over and help him out. My mind went blank. I didn't know what to think. I always thought he was straight, and I always thought he was someone I could trust. But now everything felt different. I could feel the tension between us, even if he wasn't saying out loud. Was he asking because he was genuinely curious, or was it something more? Part of me wanted to just ignore it, but another part of me, one I tried not to acknowledge, was intrigued. I didn't know what this would mean for our friendship, our living situation. Would things be weird between us now? Would this change everything?
I waited, nervous but a little excited, for Jason to come to my room. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I wasn't going to lie to myself. I was hoping for something to happen. The weirdest part of it all was how calm I felt. Like this was just something that needed to happen, and if he was going to judge me, at least he'd know the real me. I heard the knock at the door, and my heart raced. "Come in," I said, trying to sound normal even though my hands were shaking a little. When he stepped inside, I could tell he was hesitant. He stood in the doorway, eyes darting around the room, as if he wasn't quite sure whether to stay or leave. I hadn't even thought to cover up. I didn't want to be shy about it anymore. I needed to know if this was something we could share without it ruining everything. I pointed to myself, the question hanging in the air. I think I was trying to gauge if he'd pull back or if he'd lean in. Part of me felt like I had to ask, but the other part was just desperate to see what would happen next. When he stepped forward, I felt a rush of heat in my chest. It was like a switch flipped, and I didn't want to let myself think too much about it. His eyes flickered between my face and what was right in front of him, and I saw the hesitation. But there was also something else there. He didn't say anything, but I could see it in his expression, the curiosity, the temptation, whatever you want to call it. He was trying to process it all, but I think deep down, he knew he was in too deep to pull away now.
I knocked on his door. I stood there, breathing deeply, my palms sweating. Part of me was freaking out. What if this messed everything up? What if he didn't really want this, and I just made things weird? But there was another part of me, something that was harder to deny, telling me to just go with it. He told me to come in, and my heart skipped a beat. When I stepped inside, I almost froze. He was still standing there, fully exposed. I didn't know what to do at first, whether I should look away, turn around, or pretend like nothing was happening. But then he pointed to himself, and I could feel my body tense. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. Was he asking me to do something? Was I supposed to just walk away? My mind was racing, but my body was moving before I could even think it through. I walked toward him. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was afraid of what it would mean, of what it could lead to. I didn't want to ruin the friendship we had. But well, it was hard not to notice. It was too beautiful, too perfect to just ignore. And in that moment, all I could think about was just helping him out. I didn't ask for anything in return. It felt like I was doing something for him. Not because I expected anything, but because I couldn't help myself. My hands moved almost on their own as I tried to block out all the questions swirling in my mind. Was this the right thing to do? What would happen afterward? When I left his room and walked back to mine, my head was spinning. What did this mean? Did it mess up everything? I wasn't sure if I should feel good or ashamed, but all I could think about was what this would do to our friendship. I lay down in bed, trying to fall asleep, but it was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could think about was him. Would he be cold toward me now? Would he avoid me? Or worse, would he want to move out? I didn't want any of that to happen. I couldn't lose him as a friend.
I woke up the next morning with an odd sense of calm. I'd gone to sleep thinking about everything that happened the night before, and, in the daylight, it didn't seem so bad. Actually, it felt kind of nice. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding back before. It wasn't just about the physical part of it, though I'd be lying if I didn't say it felt incredible. It was also the way Jason just didn't make a big deal out of it. That was something I hadn't expected. I thought he might freak out, or things would get weird, but nothing changed. We were still living together, still roommates. It was like it didn't matter, and that felt even better than I had imagined. But when I saw him the next day, our eyes met across the kitchen, and I could see the uncertainty in his. He was thinking about last night too, I could tell. He was probably wondering if it had messed everything up, whether we could even talk about it. I decided to address it head on. No need for awkwardness. I leaned against the counter and, casually, almost like it was nothing, I said, "Hey, man, if I ever need a helping hand again, can I call you back over?" I tried to keep my tone light, not wanting to make it sound too intense. But the truth was, I was a little excited at the thought of it happening again. I had never had an experience like that before. It was the first time I'd ever received something like that from a guy, and it felt better than I could have imagined. Jason's face froze for a moment. I could see it in his eyes, the shock, the hesitation. But there was also something else there, maybe a little curiosity? It was a little strange, but I wasn't worried. I didn't think he'd be weird about it. At least, I hope not.
I couldn't believe it when I saw him the next morning. We hadn't talked at all about last night. I figured we'd both just sweep it under the rug, pretend it didn't happen, and continue being roommates. It felt like the simplest way to handle it. But when our eyes met across the kitchen, I could see the same questions in his eyes that I was having. Then he said it, just like that, in the most casual tone. "Hey, man, if I ever need a helping hand again, can I call you back over?" I blinked, feeling a wave of shock rush over me. Was he seriously asking me that? I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing. On the one hand, I felt like this could be a secret we kept between us, something that didn't need to go beyond the walls of our apartment. But then, I thought about how good it felt, how much I'd actually enjoyed what had happened. It wasn't just about the physical pleasure, it was about the connection. Was this really going to become a regular thing? And what did that mean for our friendship? Was I really going to be his dirty little secret? The thought hit me hard, and it stung more than I expected. But then again, maybe that wasn't so bad. It had been so good, so nice, the way it felt in the moment, how I didn't have to pretend or hide anything. maybe being a secret wouldn't be the worst thing. After all, what we shared that night was something special. Something I didn't want to give up just because of some silly label or fear of how it might mess things up. For a split second, I almost said yes. Maybe I would go along with it. Maybe I would be his dirty little secret if that's what he wanted. Wouldn't it just be another part of our friendship? Something a little hidden but still real? But I didn't say anything right away. I just nodded, unsure how to respond. I didn't want to jump into anything too quickly. There were still a lot of questions in my head. Was this something I want to continue? Or was it just a one-time thing? It was going to be a lot to figure out. But in that moment, all I could think about was how much I wanted to feel what we'd shared again. So there I was, standing in the kitchen the next morning, thinking my roommate was either about to pretend last night never happened or tell me he was moving out. But instead, he hit me with, "Hey man, if I ever need a helping hand again, can I call you back over?" And just like that, I realized I wasn't just his roommate anymore. I was something else. What that something else was, well, I wasn't sure yet. Was I just his dirty little secret? Would this turn into something more? Or was this just one of those wild, unspoken things between friends that we'd take to the grave? Maybe I should have been worried. Maybe I should have shut it down. But in that moment, standing there, replaying the night before in my head, all I could think was, I wouldn't mind being his secret. And that, my friends, is how I found myself in the most unexpected situations of my life. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done? Would you have gone back for round 2? Or would you have shut it down before it got too complicated? Until next time, stay bold, stay proud, and remember, sometimes life takes you in very unexpected directions. This has been Petals and Pride. See you in the next one.